Hola, diplomatic earthquake in the Americas. Trump unleashes tariff tsunami against Brazil as the world holds its breath. An unprecedented trade war has begun. America's revenge. Trump humiliates Europe and demands payback for decades of abuse. Welcome to VERDAD POLITICA. Here we expose power and reveal what others hide. Subscribe, share, and join the information resistance. Wake up, get informed, and take action today. An unprecedented storm looms over the relationship between the United States and Brazil. Former President Donald Trump has shaken the very foundations of diplomacy by threatening to impose a 50% tariff on Brazilian imports, an extreme measure reportedly linked directly to the controversial trial of former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro. This decision has triggered a furious response from Brazil's current leader, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, who didn't hesitate to return Trump's letter, calling it offensive and full of falsehoods. Tensions have escalated alarmingly, with Lula promising a strong response, making it clear that Brazil will not be tutored by Washington. Amid this powder keg, even Bolsonaro's son has joined the fray, criticizing Lula's stance, revealing just how deeply this crisis is dividing even Brazil's own political ranks. The question hanging in the air is, are we on the brink of a trade war with global repercussions? Trump's attack on Brazil, through the threat of a 50% tariff, is not some isolated whim. It's a clear statement of intent in his crusade for justice and the defense of American interests. The benefit of this bold stance, for both the Trump administration and the American people, lies in the unmistakable message that acts undermining democracy and due process in allied nations will not be tolerated. The explicit mention of Jair Bolsonaro's trial is no minor detail. It serves as a direct warning to what many view as a political persecution orchestrated by progressive forces in Brazil. This is a signal that under patriotic leadership, the United States will not stand idly by while judicial systems are manipulated to eliminate political opponents. While a 50% tariff is certainly drastic, it is a necessary pressure tactic to defend the principles of liberty and justice, sending a powerful message to those attempting to destabilize the region with globalist agendas. Lula's government returning Trump's letter, calling it offensive and full of falsehoods, only confirms the deep polarization gripping the continent. To the patriotic and pro-Trump camp, Brazil's reaction demonstrates progressive arrogance and a stubborn refusal to accept constructive criticism regarding internal affairs. Lula's refusal to be tutored by the US, as he put it, reveals a defiant stance that could have very serious consequences for Brazil's economy, and by extension, for regional stability. The downside for the United States in the short term could be a spike in diplomatic and trade tensions, potentially affecting some import sectors. However, from a geopolitical perspective, this confrontation is a reaffirmation of American resolve in the face of governments veering away from democratic and free market values. The central controversy here lies in how Brazil's current government chooses to prioritize its ideology over a strategic trade relationship with the world's largest power. The entry of Eduardo Bolsonaro, son of the former president, into the debate, criticizing Lula's stance toward Trump's tariff threat, adds another layer of complexity to the crisis, revealing deep political fractures within Brazil. For Trump supporters and freedom advocates, Bolsonaro Jr.'s intervention underscores the desperation of a segment of Brazilian politics that fears the leftist drift of Lula's government and its impact on US-Brazil relations. This 50% tariff is not just punishment, it's a sign of support for Brazil's conservative forces fighting the rise of progressivism and globalism in their country. The controversy stems from media manipulation that will try to portray Trump as an aggressor, when in reality, he is defending the principles of justice. For the future of the American people, these actions demonstrate a leadership willing to use every tool available to protect national interests, even if that means straining ties with recalcitrant allies. Trump's decision to link the tariff directly to Bolsonaro's trial is a bold move that goes straight for the jugular of Brazil's judicial system. It sends a clear message: political persecution will not go unpunished. Trump's critics, defenders of globalism and progressivism, will scream interference. But the truth is that a strong leader is never afraid to call out injustice wherever it occurs. This move is not just about tariffs, it's about principles. If there's one thing Americans can expect from this administration, it's a foreign policy grounded in reciprocity and a fearless defense of core values, without concessions to ideological agendas that seek to destabilize allied nations. The real controversy lies in how globalist elites will try to divert attention from the true reason behind this threat: defending a conservative leader unjustly persecuted by a politicized judicial system. This 50% tariff should also be seen as a warning to other Latin American countries flirting with authoritarian regimes or allowing progressive agendas to undermine regional stability. For the United States, this consolidates Trump's image as a leader who keeps his promises and is willing to go the distance to protect American interests. On the geopolitical stage, this is a show of force, proof that the United States can and will apply pressure when its allies stray from the democratic path and drift toward ideologies that threaten hemispheric security. The downside for the enemies of freedom is that they will be forced to reevaluate their alliances and face the economic consequences of their choices. The controversy will likely focus on the claim that Trump is anti-Brazil, when in reality he is anti-corruption and anti-political persecution, defending an ally who was attacked by his own institutions. Lula's rhetoric, "Brazil will not be tutored," echoes the old guard of Latin American leftism, but it ignores the reality of an interconnected world where actions have consequences. From the perspective of American patriots, national sovereignty does not justify impunity or political persecution. For American citizens, Trump's actions provide reassurance that their government is standing up for justice beyond our borders, defending those persecuted for their beliefs. The future, under pro-American leadership, promises a reconfiguration of international alliances, where loyalty to democratic principles will be the true currency. The controversy will inevitably be amplified by those who benefit from the globalist status quo. But the truth is that the American people are tired of being manipulated and demand bold action to defend our values. If this tariff threat materializes, it could spark a domino effect in global trade, forcing companies to reevaluate supply chains and seek more stable and reliable markets. For the Trump administration, this is an opportunity to bring industries back home and create jobs on American soil, a core promise of his platform. The America First policy isn't just a slogan, it's a comprehensive strategy to strengthen our economy and secure our global dominance. The controversy will intensify as progressive media tries to shift blame to Trump for the economic fallout while ignoring the root issue in Brazil. But history will remember that it was the courageous leadership of a patriot who dared to challenge the globalist establishment and defend freedom and justice, even if that meant confronting allies who had lost their way. And as if the tsunami against Brazil weren't enough, Trump has now turned his fire on Europe. The indomitable titan of global politics has unleashed a true revolution, one that is forcing the old continent's powers to finally be held accountable. The feast at America's expense is over. The era of complacency has come to an end, along with the servile dependence on a generous but now unrelenting nation. Prepare for a new reality, one where sovereignty and strength return to center stage, leaving behind the globalist utopias that have caused so much damage. The news shaking the foundations of the world order is clear. President Trump has ended what he considers decades of unfair burdens placed on the shoulders of the American taxpayer. Europe, long accustomed to NATO's military protection without fully paying its share, now faces an ultimatum. The demand is direct: drastically increase defense spending from 2% to 5% of GDP by 2035. This move, seen by many as a bold geopolitical chess move, aims to rebalance power by forcing reluctant allies to take responsibility and stop relying solely on American military might. In addition, Trump has threatened massive tariffs on European goods, seeking to correct what he sees as glaring trade imbalances and unfair practices that have harmed American workers and businesses. It's a two-pronged assault that is redefining transatlantic relations. This bold move by Trump isn't just about numbers, it's a statement of principles. For the president, it's about restoring America's dignity and ensuring every ally pulls their weight. For years, he has asked the same question: why should American citizens keep funding the security of wealthy nations that, in return, maintain trade deficits with Washington? This measure is a forceful answer to that question, pushing Europe into a painful self-evaluation of its actual defense capabilities and willingness to pay for them. The era of free rides is over, along with the patience of a leader who refuses to bow to globalist dictates. The imposition of 20% tariffs and the threat to raise them to 50% on European imports is not a whim, but a strategy to level the playing field. President Trump has pointed to the European Union's massive $198 billion trade surplus with the United States as irrefutable evidence that the current system hurts the American economy. This America First policy seeks to protect domestic industry, jobs, and economic sovereignty, targeting agricultural barriers and value-added taxes that, according to the administration, distort fair trade. It's a direct strike at the jugular of the globalist trade system that has enriched transnational elites at the expense of American workers. The Trump administration's core argument is that Big Brother America has been exploited for decades. While the US invested trillions in global defense, Europe allegedly rested under that umbrella of protection, redirecting its resources to social programs and other priorities. The new 5% GDP goal for defense, while ambitious, is viewed as a fair measure for Europe to take on its collective responsibility. This stance challenges the progressive narrative of unconditional cooperation and replaces it with a pragmatic vision where alliances are based on reciprocity and equitable contribution, not on American charity. The geopolitical implications of this stance are immense. Trump's demand for greater European defense investment ultimately seeks to strengthen NATO from within, forcing each member to become a more capable and self-sufficient actor. The days of taking NATO's Article 5 commitment for granted are over. Now, mutual defense is conditional upon real investment and real capacity. This pressure could drive greater European strategic autonomy, but on Trump's terms, Europe must pay for its own security, freeing the US from unnecessary burdens so it can focus on its national interests and other global threats. Domestically, for Americans, this policy translates into a promise of relief and prosperity. Less taxpayer money going abroad means more resources for domestic needs, infrastructure, border security, and the revitalization of national industries. The Trump administration maintains that by forcing Europe to carry its fair share of the burden in defense and trade, the domestic economy is strengthened, jobs are created, and the deficit is reduced. It's a clear message to the voter base that craves a government focused on citizens' interests over global entanglements. However, these actions are not without controversy. Critics, mostly progressive and globalist voices, lament what they see as the weakening of traditional alliances and a slide toward protectionism. They argue that tariffs could trigger a trade war harming both sides and that Trump's defense demands could fragment NATO. The legality and wisdom of conditioning Article 5 on payments is questioned, as is the risk of destabilization at a time of growing global tension. But to Trump's supporters, these criticisms are merely the dying cries of an old order unwilling to let go. The Trump administration has made it clear, if Europe fails to respond adequately to these demands, the consequences will be real. The goal is a stronger NATO, but with Europe paying its full share, no more excuses. Though trade tensions may hurt in the short term, they're seen as a necessary evil to correct decades of imbalances that have undermined American prosperity. Geopolitics is being reshaped by an America that leads from a position of strength, demanding respect and reciprocity, and making it known that the days of being the world's policeman or free security provider are over. This analysis reveals an undeniable truth. The era of geopolitical naivete is over. The Trump administration, with its blunt and unapologetic style, is rewriting the rules of engagement. For Americans, it promises a future in which the nation regains its economic and military strength, shedding the burdens of globalist entanglements. The controversies are the price of greatness and of challenging the status quo. The domestic outcome will be a stronger economy and a more secure populace. On the global stage, a new order, fairer and more balanced, is emerging. At VERDAD Politica, we believe that open debate is essential. What consequences do you think Trump's offensive will have for Brazil and global geopolitics? Comment below and let your voice be heard.